Hi, Jeff. Thanks for interviewing with me today to talk about your writing and what good writing is. Could you tell me a little bit about what you think good writing is?
What do I think good writing is? Uh, it's a good question. I think that good writing has empathy for the reader. So being able to place yourself in the shoes of the person who will be reading your writing. And I guess one thing I find difficult about writing is getting the message across to the person who will be reading it who doesn't necessarily have the same background or expertise that I do. And that's where I find difficulty in creating a thread that goes from the beginning of the piece that you're writing to the end that is unbroken. And I think good writing does that. And I struggle to do that. And I think I've had some success by placing myself in the shoes of the reader and thinking about how they might interpret this. But that's always a difficult task because you know what you know about the writing and you may be an expert in that area, and it's likely that whoever's reading it will not have the exact same expertise that you do. So I think it's difficult to do to have empathy for the reader, but I think it's necessary, and the best authors that I've read are able to do that really well and take you on a journey with them, even if you don't have the same expertise as them, the author, as a reader.
Okay, so when you're writing I know you do a lot of research papers. When you're writing your research papers, are you writing them to a broad audience, to everybody, or is it more for an audience that is in the same field as you? Because then you don't have to do as much of that, trying to make it digestible for everybody. Or do you still do that when you're writing?
Well, so I work in a management department and I specifically do research on entrepreneurs and their well being. Entrepreneurs find it hard to have high well being. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that you might like being an entrepreneur. You have high autonomy, high personal connection to the work, but there's also a lot of reasons that you might have lower well being because of the stresses that exist and the personal responsibility that you have for the business. All the employees, all the customers, all the partners, perhaps, investors, bankers, these people that you need to make an impression on, and their impression of you and your work matters. So there's a lot of potential stressors that could be hindrances, not challenges. So I write in that area, and I want to make it interesting to management scholars who maybe don't know about and don't write about entrepreneurship. So these are new ventures with people who are starting businesses. So I think I have to do that some, but these are also scholars who are generating new knowledge themselves. And so they can, I think that there is a certain level of technicality that I can assume is understood in my research papers. Uh, so I guess I'm kind of, when you are able to put yourself in the shoes of other people, now there are other people who do entrepreneurship research, and they probably read my papers more often than regular general management scholars. So they have a different level of expertise too. And then every once in a while, um, a media person will pick up my paper and read it, and I've been asked to do interviews based on the results from my papers. So there's a very diverse audience that reads my papers, and I want my writing to be digestible by any of those people with varying levels of expertise, people who are close to my field, people who are adjacent to my field, and people who are not familiar with academic research. And so I think simpler is better, although there are technical expectations that are in place to get through the peer review process. So it's a delicate balance, and I think it's a difficult task to write a research paper that is still digestible by the general public. And I've done that with varying degrees of success in the past.
Okay. Um, you said that you have done that with varying degrees of success in the past. How have you worked on making it meet those parameters, and getting better at that as you've been writing? Do you um, seek help from other people, or is it more of a self guided process?
Mm, I have enlisted the help of copy editors before submitting a paper for peer review, and that helps me understand where tricky parts of what I'm writing exist in the piece, or where I could have been clearer in my language. And what's nice about using a copy editor is they're usually outside your area of expertise. And so employing the copy editor opens your eyes to those failings that you had and being empathetic with your readers. So I have enlisted help that way. In today's day and age, you can use generative AI to proofread your paper for typos and writing errors. So I haven't had to ask for friendly reviews or copy editing as much in the last couple of years since the advent of generative AI. And there are some times where I'm married and I'll ask my wife to, even before I've written anything, I'll ask her about an idea and see what she thinks of it as a person who's not in the field. Because sometimes I get stuck in my silo talking to people that I know that have similar expertise, and I might be writing something that nobody wants to read. So I guess those are the types of help that I ask for, both in the idea generation phase and when something has been fairly well polished and I'm ready to submit it for peer review. I'll also mention that I have written for popular press outlets before, like Harvard Business Review, or I've been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal for some of the research that I do. And in those communications, for Harvard Business Review, I got to write it, and then they did some editing to it. And I could see how they edited it and made it more digestible for their audience, which is more of a less academic audience, I guess I would say. Not people who are creating original research, but who are consuming research. And so that was a positive experience. And then being interviewed, I could kind of see what types of questions the interviewer asked, and I could see how they wanted to press into certain topics that maybe I wouldn't have, coming from my particular background. And that gives me feedback, valuable feedback, for what people want to hear and what they want to talk about. And it helps shape, not only that piece that I'm writing at the time, but also it helps shape the future ideas that I want to work on. New elements of entrepreneurial psychology that haven't been explored before, but I think are worthwhile learning, so that entrepreneurs can have the highest well-being outcomes that they possibly could achieve while doing a really hard thing of starting a new business.
Okay. What's the piece of writing that you're really proud of that you've done and that you think has made an impact and you feel like is a good piece of writing?
Well, so a lot of times I'm doing original research where I'm recruiting human subjects as participants and performing either experiments or just making observations. And those could be in the format of interviews or surveys, or an experimental manipulation if it's an experiment, to try and get to the bottom of how entrepreneurs make decisions and those key precursors and outcomes for doing entrepreneurship, starting a business. But there are other times where I write to try and inform other authors about what I've learned in my research and in consuming other research. So one particular piece that I'm proud of, I worked on it with two other co-authors, one in London and the other in New Zealand. And so it was a truly international collaboration. And since we were in such diverse time zones, we could really work on it around the clock, and the process went very fast. But the end result was an editorial for other authors in the research world, in the entrepreneurship research world, to think about this paradox of well-being for entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs find it very hard to recover from work, perhaps even more so than regular employees, even if those employees are very autonomous. And I mentioned this before. Entrepreneurs have high personal connection to their work and high levels of autonomy on how they spend their time. but they also have a lot of stressors that are placed on them. So that's sort of the paradox that we were playing with in this piece of writing, and thinking about how can we ameliorate the negative outcomes on entrepreneur well-being, so make them better, or how can we exacerbate or accentuate the positive consequences on well-being, and or the positive antecedents, I should say, the things that lead to better well-being, because they both exist. So how can we make those the best that they can? How can we make their well-being equation the best that it can be? And so we offered a lot of future research ideas for interventions that you could do with entrepreneurs. And how are we doing on time? Are we okay?
Is this the piece of writing that you had pulled up for me earlier that we took a quick look at?
Yeah, you asked me to find a piece of writing that I was proud of, and this is it, this editorial that I was referring to. And the idea was to inspire other researchers to perform interventions to improve entrepreneurs' recovery and thereby make better their well-being outcomes. So this paper has inspired several people to do that type of research, and it's given, in my position as an associate editor, that's what afforded me the opportunity to write the editorial piece. And I'm also editing a special issue now on entrepreneurial interventions. I don't think that I would have been asked to be on that team of guest editors if I had not written this piece. So I'm very excited. I mean, over 100 other papers have cited this paper as in some way, shape, or form in their own writing, in their own peer-reviewed writing. And so there's a lot of impetus for this type of research, and I feel like I was on the early stage. I and others that wrote with me and were writing about the same stuff at the same time were on the front side of what appears to be a groundswell of research in the area of well-being. And workplace well-being is a hot topic right now too, and I'm happy to be writing about entrepreneurs because I used to have a business. I used to live a life where I worked really hard, worked a lot of hours, but it was also very stressed out, and I wasn't the best dad, husband, or organizational employee I could be, and I thought it would be interesting to study that after selling my business, so that's why I'm doing it now. And there are other papers that I'm proud of as well, other research papers that are empirical and original, but this editorial I think I'm most proud of because of all the other research that it's inspired just in a few years, and I hope that it continues in the future.
Yeah, so receiving citations on a paper that is an entry into a field that is blowing up must feel pretty good, and it is evidence of good writing, that you did some good writing, that other people are using it.
Yeah, I mean, not every citation is an indication that somebody's read your paper, but they've at least read the title and maybe the abstract, and they understand the gist of what you're writing. So I'm not so deluded that I think that everybody is reading and hanging on every word, but I suspect that some people have read it fairly closely, and that's based on conversations that I've had at conferences, international conferences with people from around the world who have talked to me about this paper, and it's very clear that they have read it and understood it and digested it. And there's no higher compliment than somebody saying that to you. The citations, yeah, they're nice. They matter for impact statistics, but I guess it's just a byproduct of writing on something that other people are interested in. And the thing that makes me excited, though, is when other people want to continue the work and they want to do empirical work, because I'm only one person who can create new knowledge, and I don't move as fast as many people could. So when there's hundreds of people doing this type of research, and you are a part of why they've decided to do this research, that feels pretty good. And those are fun conversations to have. And I think that I won't call my rating on that paper good. I could probably give my co-authors credit for that. But I think that our intent to make the paper digestible to that audience and give them clear-cut instructions, actionable instructions on how to conduct interventions is one of the reasons that so many people not only read it but decided to go do work that follows on.
That's great. I think inspiring others is one of the most important things we can do in our life. And doing that through writing is pretty empowering. Can you talk about a piece of writing that you have read before that has inspired you? It can be research, it can be fiction, it can be anything.
Yeah, I think I would be a better writer if I read more fiction. And when I do read fiction, I think it spurs creativity in me in my own writing, even though I'm not a fiction writer. But most of what I read is nonfiction. And I can think of one paper that I always... So we train doctoral students here to take faculty jobs on their own. And I just had a student a couple weeks ago place at a research school, and I'm really excited about that. But the reason I bring this up is this piece of writing up is because I assign it to all the doctoral students who come through the program at UCF. And it's a paper written in the Journal of Organizational Behavior, and it's about the randomness that can happen in the publication process. And I read it as a graduate student, and I got really excited about the potential for publishing peer-reviewed research. And the reason I got excited is because of the message that article delivered. And the article is about, even in a random peer review process, just a little bit about the peer review process. You submit your paper for peer review. It's handled by a field editor. That field editor selects reviewers to review the paper. They are apparently your peers, so people in the field who do similar research to what you do, or what you've submitted anyway. And they give you anonymized feedback. And some of it is very critical. Reviewers are critical, and I've learned this in my job as an editor too. And that's hard. I had submitted some papers when and been rejected by the time I read this paper as a graduate student. And those rejections are hard to take. But even though there's some randomness in who gets your paper as an editor, who is assigned as reviewers, this paper that I read talked about how your true score, your true researcher ability, can be revealed if you control things that you do have control over. And those two things are your level of activity, so how much you write. If you continue, obviously higher levels of activity reveal your true score sooner than lower levels of activity, and your level of resilience. So when you get a rejection, are you willing to submit that paper to another place? Or do you give it up and put it in a file drawer and go back to the drawing board? And obviously higher levels of resilience lead to greater revelations of true scores. So that was inspiring to me as a graduate student. It was very relevant for the career I was getting into. I was switching careers, obviously. I had a company for 7 years and sold it, and then got trained, and now I'm in the academic field. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. So I was very inspired by that piece, and it was hopeful. It's one of the rare times that I read a research paper and go home and tell my wife about it, but I did that day. So.
Well, I think we're going to have to end the interview there. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciated what you had to say. I think it was very insightful and valuable for the paper that I'm about to write. Okay. Hopefully I can do some good writing there.
Yeah, best of luck. I'm happy to help if I can in the future, and happy writing.
Thanks.